You joining us here on digital streaming for NewsNation. I'm Joe Khalil. I am one of our Washington correspondents. We're going to have a discussion today, and we're going to talk a lot about border security and our view of it from Washington, D.C. We had a moment on our air Wednesday that in itself was pretty newsmaking. Excuse me. And so we've talked about it yesterday and today. We're going to lay that out here. It has to do with the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, coming to Washington testifying, and our reporting at the southern border as well. This is a discussion. It's not just me talking. So for all of you out there in the digital world, if you're listening and you want to weigh in on the discussion, if you have any questions at all, you can drop them in here, and our digital team is going to relay them to me. So this is, again, not just a one-way thing, and I will do my best to answer your questions as best I can. So the story that we're really covering and bringing to you is that yesterday, almost at the same time, we had two big things happening. One, as I mentioned, Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security, was on Capitol Hill testifying for a congressional committee. And the bulk of his argument that he was making was that the border is secure. Now, at the very same time that that was happening, our correspondent, who is stationed at the border every day, Allie Bradley, was doing a live shot where she was literally speaking about border crossings, and we had our cameras catch people climbing over the border wall. So it was this really amazing sort of split screen, ironic moment where you have the chief of the agency responsible for it saying, no, everything is fine. And almost simultaneously, we see in real time the problem and illustrate the fact that it's not fine. We have a serious issue at the southern border. Just moments after he testified here, and you're seeing a bit of that testimony now in the congressional committee there. Secretary Mayorkas came out. He was in the hallway. I was there. Our cameraman was there. We tried to ask him a question. I can play that moment for you here, and then we'll move forward. Here's what we tried to get.
During our live shot, there were some people that were crossing the border, like in the background of our shot. Just wondering, how can you reasonably say the border is secure at this moment? Just anything? All right.
So you see that we tried to ask him, and actually we had video of the moment, right? Because our correspondent was doing a live shot. So I was going up to lawmakers and showing them and saying, hey, while you're in that hearing, look what's going on. This was happening live. And we got a lot of reaction from lawmakers, mostly Republicans. In their view, the Biden administration simply not doing enough to invest in the border, to handle the border surge of migrants that are coming across. Some coming to the border being turned away, some others coming into the country, some illegally that we know about, others that we don't know about. And so that was the view from them. But I figured if we're showing lawmakers, we might as well also show the Secretary of Homeland Security what we were seeing, hoping he would give us some kind of response, some kind of reaction. Obviously, as you just saw there, we did not get it. So that was the moment that we have been sort of highlighting yesterday and again this morning as we really start to dig in. Now, the hearing itself, the reason that Mayorkas was in Washington at all in front of Congress is because every year the chief of Homeland Security has to come ask Congress for its budget, essentially has to make the case as to why they need the number they're asking for. In his case, he and Homeland Security, they're asking for about $60 billion in the upcoming year's budget. So he's got to answer lawmakers' questions about why they need that money, how it's being used. But oftentimes what we see in those hearings is it's not just focused on the money and the budget. They focus on other things. And so in this case, Alejandro Mayorkas got questions about whether the border was secure. He said he felt it was by his definition, which is, are we putting all of our resources that we possibly can toward the border? And so in that definition, he says, yes, he believes it is secure. What we're seeing from just purely data and the numbers at our border is something quite different. There is a very serious situation, whether you call it a crisis or whether you call it a severe problem. It doesn't matter what name you put on it or what label. The bottom line is last fiscal year, we had something like 2.7 million border encounters. What do encounters mean? They mean that the migrants that are coming from Central and South America, from other places, through Mexico, get to that southern border. Either they are processed or they are turned away. But that 2.7 million number is a record. We have never seen that high. So we're talking about more than 200,000 every single month over the last year or so. Again, that is a very considerable surge and something that lawmakers and others are saying, Secretary Mayorkas, at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. You need to be handling this. If you're a watcher of NewsNation, if you regularly follow us, you're likely familiar with Allie Bradley, our amazing correspondent who covers the border. She's in Arizona, she's in Texas. She kind of spans a number of different places and goes where the story is. Almost every day, she's reporting about situations that are there. There are quite a few problems on the border. It's not just the illegal migration, but we're also talking about people who own homes in border towns. We're talking about towns who are basically overwhelmed. A lot of their resources, their law enforcement, their emergency services are all going to serve these communities. So what you're seeing right now, actually on your screen, that is the video that we were getting just moments before Alejandro Mayorkas was testifying. This was in real time, as you see there, somebody crossing, climbing over that wall. And again, it just offered a very real anecdotal split screen of what's going on. You have our leaders here in Washington. That's Allie actually there in your shot.
They want you on IFB to get you.
Yeah, that's Allie there in her shot. It was just an incredible thing that we were seeing those images coming across, and also hearing from the secretary as he was getting questions. Not very often you get that kind of dual moment happening at the same time. We just laid out there the specific numbers every year that we get in terms of people coming across. There are a term that, again, if you follow NewsNation and you watch Allie Bradley's reporting, you're familiar with this. If not, then maybe you aren't so much so, but gotaways is the term that we refer to when it's not just an encounter at the border, but it's when somebody, like you just saw, illegally comes over, runs into the United States, and it is nearly impossible to account for how many people are doing that. For all of those, essentially, it's a known unknown. We don't know how many people are doing the very thing that you're seeing on your screen when our NewsNation cameras are not there, not catching all of these things, obviously. Neither are Homeland Security's cameras and personnel, who often feel overwhelmed and tell NewsNation that they feel overwhelmed, agents on the ground. So, it is a very serious problem that we're dealing with here. We should mention that the Homeland Security Agency as a whole, that's a big job. I mean, that's a very wide jurisdiction. So we're not just talking about folks at the border, but you're talking about ICE, you're talking about Customs, a number of agents there. You're talking about dealing with even terror threats, oftentimes, Homeland Security. So, it's not just border issues. When we talk about possible solutions for this, you look to Congress and see what are they doing in terms of proposing things that plans, possibilities, ideas that may stem the massive influx of these migrant surges. We can get into that here in a second. I'm going to take a question. Our producer is sending me a question from Mike. It says, is President Biden keeping parts of Title 42 in place? And how much are Republicans and Democrats actually different on that? So it seems that there is an eventuality that Title 42 is coming to an end. In fact, actually, there was a resolution just passed in Congress. It was Republican-led, but there was some Democratic support that basically says all COVID-era things should now be able to come to an end. President Biden was speaking out against it, but he said, he publicly made clear he's not going to veto it, meaning when Republicans and, again, some Democrats send that ending COVID measures to his desk, which is what Title 42 is, he's going to sign it into law. We talk about, it's a good question, Mike. Thank you for it. How different are Republicans and Democrats on this? I think there may be a bit of a misconception that it's just Republicans worried about border security, worried about fentanyl, illegal drugs coming across the border, and that Democrats are, for open borders or whatever. Sometimes that's often the narrative that we get in partisan media, which NewsNation certainly is not. We're built on being the opposite of that. Not exactly the case. That's a pretty incomplete picture. Yes, Republicans are out front. They oppose many of the Biden administration's ideas. They want a border wall to be built. They don't think the Biden administration is doing enough. But if you talk to Democrats, many of them will publicly, and others sometimes just privately, will acknowledge there is a serious problem at the border and that they don't have a problem sending resources to secure the border. It's just the debate lies within what resources, what works, what doesn't. Does it make sense to be building a massive wall? Does it make sense to be more targeted with cameras and new technology and what have you? But I mean, I spoke with a Democrat today, actually, Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, who's got a bill that also deals with trying to strip cartels, the drug cartels from Mexico, of their ability to use social media to recruit, to get people illegally across the border. So, there are a number of measures that Democrats are in some cases even spearheading. It is a serious problem that many in both parties acknowledge. It's just they often differ on the solutions, but it's a really good question, Mike. Thank you for it. Sean asks, what are Mayorkas' job responsibilities? What can he really do to improve the situation? So as the Secretary of Homeland Security, ultimately the buck does stop with him. Now, he doesn't automatically pull piles of money and is able to throw it at the border. He has to request that from Congress. But I think what members are asking of him is to, number one, just acknowledge that there is a crisis going on at the border. It may sound simple, but that seems like a first step that so far he has not taken. So lawmakers want to see him do that. As the head of the agency, he does have the ability to decide how many people or personnel go where. If we need more border agents, if they need support, that would be something that would be in his purview, would be in his toolbox, actually, he could do. There are other things. I mean, he has the ability to go to the administration as a cabinet secretary and say, we need to significantly increase how much money we're doing, how many agents we have along various borders. And also, he can help shape the policies that we have as well. He's an important voice in figuring out, whether we want to end Title 42, whether we want to enact the Remain in Mexico policy, which was in place under former President Trump. Remain in Mexico, meaning that if immigrants, if migrants are waiting to potentially apply for asylum and come to the United States, they can't stay in the U.S. They have to stay on the Mexico side of the border while their case is pending. All of those things would be part of the job that Secretary Mayorkas could do. And so far, again, he's not getting high marks at all from Republicans, many of them demanding that he even resign because, Sean, they don't feel like he is living up to his responsibilities and doing what he should be doing. Yesterday, he was getting some tough questions, but really Tuesday in front of the Senate, he got the real grilling that people had been talking about. I think we actually have a moment where Senator Ted Cruz from Texas was sort of laying into Secretary Mayorkas in a pretty aggressive way. If we have that, I think we can play that, a bit of it now.
I do not.
You do not. Of course you don't. I know how many died, 853. Let's look at CBP encounters. You can see 500,000, 500,000. It drops to the lowest level, and boom, what happens? You show up. But look what has happened under your policy. When you open up the border to the worst illegal immigration in our nation's history, people die. Mr. Secretary, I want to say to you right now,
It is
your
precisely-
behavior is disgraceful, and the deaths, the children assaulted, the children raped, they are at your feet, and if you had integrity, you would resign.
So look, Ted Cruz, certainly known as a bit of a firebrand. If I can fact check Senator Cruz here for a quick second, I'm not sure that it's entirely fair to blame the fentanyl crisis on Secretary Mayorkas, simply because while we talked about what a gotaway is and what a migrant encounter is, the facts are that most of the fentanyl illegally that comes into the United States comes through our legal ports of entry, not at random parts in the border. So, we're actually just a bit of information and background there. But Secretary Mayorkas got a grilling, and we heard from Senator Cruz. Sorry, we have a little visitor here. This is my 1-year-old. I'm doing double duty as dad here. I'm going to put you down for this 1 second, okay? The senator does bring up a point about the number of encounters. When you talk about, again, something like 200,000 migrant encounters every single month, that was the chart that Senator Cruz was pointing to. And you saw that line spike. It was in the last 2 years. And so this administration certainly has that to answer for. And that's in part why you have a number of lawmakers really frustrated with Secretary Mayorkas, because they don't feel like he's treating that situation with the seriousness that it demands. So anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for following along with us. I'm getting a cue that my 10 minutes is up, and I think the little girl here is also going to appreciate that. Sorry about that little interference. Thank you for all for following this stream. If you have more questions, I wouldn't mind. And I'm talking to the producers now. If we get them later as this is posted, you guys want to send them to me, I'll hop on our Facebook page and I will answer the questions as well later on tonight if I can. Again, thanks everybody for watching News Nation. I would encourage you to tune in later on this evening and for Morning in America and News Nation Live as well. You can catch our reporting and again, our great reporter at the border, Ali Bradley, and all of those shows as well, doing some really, really heroic work down there. So thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And thanks for spending a couple of minutes with us.